Hi, I'm Vanessa Clark, Superintendent for the Lacey Township School District. To my right is Mrs. Michelle Amos, K through 6 District Supervisor, and to my left, Mr. Will Zielinski, who is our middle school and high school district supervisor. Today we're going to present a report on student achievement, and we have some slides to share. Under normal circumstances, the annual student achievement report is typically done in October. But this has been a very unusual year, as most things have been related to COVID. And so it is appropriate to start a slide called Summary of a COVID Year, because there has been nothing typical. So in terms of the summary, we know that on March 13th, all public schools closed due to the pandemic. Year-end events were canceled, graduations were canceled or delayed, and one other thing that was canceled was the NJSLA, or the New Jersey Student Learning Assessments. Students did not participate in those in the spring, which is typically what happens. And then finally, the school year began in September, but it was very unique and it was very challenging, as some students were on full remote. Some students were participating in cohorts, A and B, as we know. And so here we are in December presenting the student achievement report, but what we have to remember is that the data that we are going to be talking about is data from the 2018-2019 school year.
Right, and we'll be presenting some of the data from the beginning of this school year with some local assessments, and we're going to summarize some of the data that we've collected from SATs and PSATs, which were also administered in the fall of 2020 to most of our students, and we worked very hard to get remote students and in-person students to get a lot of those assessments done so we could present some of the data and show where we're at as a school district.
So we're going to start with the NJSLA data combined with some PARC data, because we've just recently transitioned to the NJSLA. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a 5-year comparison of student achievement based on some state and local assessments. We'll start with the NJSLA. Just to review with you, there are 5 performance levels on this assessment. Level 1 indicates that they're not yet meeting grade level expectations. Level 2 is that they are partially meeting grade level expectations. Level 3 indicates that they are approaching the grade level of expectations. Level 4 is that they're meeting the expectations, and level 5 is that they exceed grade level expectations. On this next slide that indicates the ELA achievement and growth over 5 years, I understand that it is a very comprehensive slide and difficult to read the statistics that are actually on this slide, so we're going to break it down a little further as we move through our presentation. But we're pleased to see, if you can look at anything on this slide, that you're starting to see more green than red. And green is better. And let's take a look at the next slide. That kind of spells it out a little more clearly. The lightest color of purple is our 2014-15 data, and the darkest purple is our 18-19 data. And while this data doesn't compare the same students, it compares the grade level over time. And we're pleased to see that, with a few blips here and there, we are on an upward trajectory of students that are meeting and exceeding expectations in English language arts.
Right, and this would be on the state assessment, all right, that was given at the in the spring of 2019. So you're looking at those results, and just like Michelle says, the most pleasing thing that you see on this slide is that in most cases everything is moving up, which means that our students are getting better. As far as state assessments are concerned, and we're going to talk about local assessments and other things, but this is on district ELA assessments.
Grades 3 through 9.
3 through 9, 3 through 10.
3 through 10, sorry.
Right, because in that year we gave it to 10th graders
Yes,
as well.
yes, and the final indicator on there is the all grades combined. So then you're going to look at a similar slide for math. It's broken down a little differently because it's not only by grade level, but when you get to the high school and you can be in different grades taking specific content areas such as algebra and geometry.
Right. And the key takeaway, we always say, the key takeaway from these slides is green is good, red is bad. And we see a lot of green, which means that in the one column, if you could read it, that more students are meeting and exceeding the standards, and less students are not meeting and partially meeting the standards. So we're going down where we should be going down, and we're going up where we should be going up, resulting in a lot of green on this slide.
The slide that follows is similar to the ELA slide. We're starting to see that upward trajectory of students, more students meeting and exceeding expectations. I think a highlight of this slide is our middle school algebra advanced students. The majority of them are doing very well, meeting and exceeding the standards or the expectations for this test.
Right, and even our high school Algebra 1 students, we're seeing a very sharp rise there. We transitioned some years ago into algebra every day for our students, whether they're middle school or high school, and it's resulted in some significant differences where you see that bar graph rising on the Algebra 1 students, whether they're middle school or high school. The next slide, we're going to talk just briefly about the NJSLA science exam, which we are, in 2019, we were in our second year of that, after 1 year of a pilot. So essentially, it really was the first year that we had results for science, the new science exam, which was going to be based on the next gen science standards, which is it's one of the few national sets of standards that most states have signed off and have implemented in their school districts. So we did a pilot, and then the 2018-2019 exam was going to be the baseline year. And if you look at that slide there, the state set minimal levels, and then it shows you where we landed. So in the green, that's where the district landed, and then the state in the white, that shows you what the minimal level that they set. We give this exam in 3 different grades. We give it in grade 5, we give it in grade 8, and we give it in grade 11. It's a comprehensive exam in all those years. It's not based on any one course, but it is based on the next gen science standards. And you can certainly look at that slide and you can see the different levels and where we have landed. So this is the baseline year. Last year would have been the first year, 2019-2020, where we could take our results, make changes as far as instructional or curriculum changes in response to looking at this national level exam. Lo and behold, due to COVID, we did not get that chance to take the 2020 exam. So I have no comparison of what it looked like other than we can show you where we landed at the end, in the first year at the end of 2019. And certainly you can see that as we go along where the district landed and then where the state landed as far as the different grades. And the different grades did a little differently when you look at it. You know, for the most part, it appears that the high school grades did a little bit better and the younger grades did a little bit worse. But again, we never got a chance to improve ourselves because this is our baseline year. You know, some of us will look forward to maybe taking this NJSLA science exam come April or May of 2021, provided that testing will take place.
The next slide deals with our English language learners. It's their English language proficiency. That score is obtained through the Access for L's. And really this slide, the first set of bars talks about Lacey Township students in particular. And my takeaway from this was that our data looks very similar to Ocean County. It looks very similar to the state. This test was updated in 2016 to be a little more rigorous, and I think we are still growing in this area and hope to continue to improve our scores.
The next slide focuses on local assessments, and as you can imagine, this is the school year where we're going to be relying on those a great deal. So in a few moments, we're going to be talking about the NWEA, and I'm not going to go through everything on this slide because you can read it, But some of the local assessments that we rely on are things like the developmental reading assessments that teachers administer to students, also known as the DRA. And then some of these relate to our curriculum. The ReadyGen computer-based performance and end-of-unit assessments are related to our elementary literacy program. And then, of course, teacher-developed assessments such as tests and quizzes and things like that. So we're going to dive into NWEA, which is also known as our measures of academic progress.
So the measure of academic progress, the NWEA map, are administered to all of our students in grades K through 9 2 to 3 times a year. It's a very personalized experience because the test is self-adjusting. When a student meets with success, it continues to increase the rigor of the questions, and when they struggle, it brings them back to where they meet with success. They provide us with a lot of essential information such as the student's Lexile, lets us know what the students know and where they're ready to learn.
And commonly we call these exams really low stakes testing because it doesn't get reported to the state. We use the information in the local classroom. Teachers have access to the information, and it gives us a good picture of where the student's at any given time when we give these assessments. And they're short. They do them in the classroom. They're online. They use their Chromebooks in most cases to get them done. It's a low stress. We've created a low stress environment for these tests to take place.
So when they receive their score at the conclusion of this testing session, it comes in the form of a RIT score. And a RIT score is really kind of like a ruler. You know, 1 inch is always 1 inch, and on the RIT, 1 RIT is 1 RIT. A student who grows from a 165 RIT to a 170 RIT shows the same amount of instructional growth as a student who goes from 280 to 285. They've both grown 5 RIT points.
I just say you want to talk about the national norming of these. So we're comparing ourselves to a national norm, which is very different than what we see in the state testing.
Absolutely. And so in the state testing, it's not nationally normed, it's not self-adjusting. This norms the students based on where they start. And it shows a growth metric. So if you look at this next slide that shows the reading grades K through 2, this is our more historical data. This is our 18-19 data. And it has beginning of year normative data. It has mid-year normative data for each of those years. And we are pleased that for the most part, we are right there. Our students are meeting the normative data and beginning and growing at a pace that's consistent with the national norms. We were able this year to administer this. It's one of the few tests that we've been able to administer that is normed and can give us an understanding of where our students are beginning after all of the unique instructional situations that we've been in. And we're pleased to say that the norm, being new this year, it's 2020 normative data. And I will clarify that 2020 normative data was not, it's a long 5-year process, and it wasn't concluded in 2020. It was actually concluded in 2019 and published in 2020. But our students coming back in the K through 2 are currently exceeding the normative data given to us by NWEA for the beginning of the year.
Which can mean two things: that our students were better prepared when they left us in June, and that our beginning of the year, since we administered this probably about the end of September into October, that our teachers did a great job of bringing them to a certain level. So we see that they've already exceeded the nationally normative data, norms. So our students are in a good place, those who were able to take the exam.
I do want to be transparent and say that our sample size is slightly smaller because at this time in the lower grades, we administered this strictly with our students that were face-to-face. As we get into our routines with the remote instruction and the remote assessments, we are looking to assess our students in the winter on the NWEA, even if they are remote. And we're hoping that our computers that we've ordered, our Chromebooks, that they are available so that it is a more standardized process when we assess from home. This is somewhat of a lengthy slide, but it's the same thing that I talked about with the K2s. Now it's the 3 through 9 reading. Also with the 2015 normative data, because it's our historical data on the fall 2018, spring 2019, fall 2019, and then we gave a winter test in most grade levels, not all, in 2019. And unfortunately, we were not able to assess in the spring of 19. So then we transitioned to our, once again, normative data 2020 for the fall. And we see a similar pattern where in most circumstances, our grade levels exceed the normative data available to us at each grade level. We go on to look at the same thing for the historical data, combined then with our fall data in the following slide. So you'll see then that we go on to the math. We look at the math K through 2, the math 3 through 9. We've got a little more work to do in a few of our areas here, but for the most part, we are still exceeding the norms, and we hope to see RIT growth that aligns with the mid-year expectations when we administer in the winter.
Right, and when I take these slides too, the gap here is a little bit smaller when we look at the normative data, which means that our students are a little bit closer to the norms, where in the reading they were a little bit further away, they were a little more advanced. In the math, they're a little bit less advanced, but still ahead of the curve, so to speak, based on the data that we have so far.
And the one thing I do want to say too is that the normative data that we have is not just based on just a few students. These norms are drawn from approximately 10 million students across the nation. So we feel like this information is very valuable on a global level, and then again on the student level, because it really lets you know where they are, what they know, what they still need support with, and how to move them to the next level. We're going to transition to talking about some of the testing that happens at the high school level.
So always part of our student achievement report is we always talk about the SATs, the PSATs, and our AP scores. We gave you a little bit of historical data here, and then we'll give what we have for the 2020 data. I'm going to talk about that a little bit because any juniors or senior parents who are listening to this presentation, you understand how challenging it's been to even get a seat for an SAT from March on. Many tests were canceled, summer tests were canceled, fall tests were full up. They gave some priorities to some of the older students. But if you look at the historical data, so you're looking at the slide here that talks about the SAT scores for 2019. We did report on this previously, but I think it's worth it to go over it again. In 2019, we had 172 of our class of 2019 students take the exam. The district mean, in all cases, except for math, we did exceed the national mean. And as you look down it, we've circled where we did exceed the national mean. In 2020, we had fewer students take the exam, but you'll see that we exceeded the national mean in all three areas. So our math scores came up, our reading scores were as high as they've been, and our total score exceeds the national means for the class of 2020. And like I explained, I think the challenges there where you see less exams taken are the challenges that the students had. We had many colleges go SAT optional. We had many students who didn't have to take those exams or take the exam a second time. The next slide is our PSAT scores. And for those parents out there who don't have high schoolers, we give the PSAT to all of our sophomores and all of our juniors in school. So we require it, those that are in attendance that day, to come and take those exams. If you look at this slide here, we show you that we break down the 10th graders and the 11th graders. Of course, the 10th graders are having less coursework done. When we get to the beginning of the 11th grade, they have a little more of the coursework done. But the SAT gauges how you are as far as the benchmark is concerned. And you'll see here, the 10th grade, you'll see a lot of growth in the English standards. We went from 51% ready to 64% from 2019 to 2020. Math stayed the same. And then you see for the 11th grade, from 19 to 20, we had another jump in the English areas, and we had a jump in the math areas as far as the PSATs are concerned. So we're pleased with that. I think the math could have been a little bit more, but of course we're always evaluating and working on our courses for that. The next slide is our advanced placement scores. I'm very pleased to announce these scores, considering that the AP went all online last year based on the COVID pandemic, and we still saw growth. The challenges at home of taking the exam, of uploading materials, of creating files for materials was extremely challenging for all of our AP students, and you see that we had some modest growth there. In the percent of students who are a 3 and greater, most colleges will take a 3 and greater on an AP exam and provide our students with college credit. We had more students take the exams, and we had growth of the number of exams, which means that more students were taking more AP courses as far as the high school was concerned. There was lots of talk when we established our college academy years ago that our students would stop taking AP courses and AP exams. That simply is not the case. We've seen no erosion of that, and our students continue to challenge themselves both by taking college courses and by taking AP courses, which of course are reported out and eventually become part of our report card when we go there. Towards the end here now, one of our last slides, we report on our 5-year graduation rate, which is how the state handles it. I know everybody thinks out there, wait a minute, they're only in high school for 4 years. There are several students who spend 5 years with us. They need some extra attention. So this is how the state reports it out, and I think you'll see the slide is pretty obvious. We are in line with other districts who are in our district factor group, other districts in Ocean County, and of course the state when you look at the 5-year graduation rate slide. The next slide is even shocked me a little bit at the growth that we've seen, and it shocked me but did not surprise me. We have done quite a lot of work here at the high school, working on our students to make them college ready, to make them, to make their transcripts, to make their resumes, to make everything that they've done for their 4 years here, right down to how our master schedule works, which is very college-like. It is the biggest jump I've ever seen in all my years here in Lacey. We've gone from 5 years ago, 31% of our students would go to 4-year colleges. We are up to 60%. That compares to 40% in 2019, 2020. We had 60% of our students accepted and go to 4-year colleges, which of course will summarily reduce the number of 2-year colleges. But we're extremely pleased with that result, knowing how tight the job markets are going to be in the end for these students, and knowing the training that they need, and many employers looking for that 4-year college degree. It really is something to write home about when you look at college acceptances for Lacey Township. In the 4-year realm, to be at 60%, it is quite the change. And I really credit the high school with a lot of the work that we've done there to make them college ready, and to really stress the fact that those 4-year degrees are going to be so important moving into the future.
Mr. Zielinski, don't you think you have to give a lot of credit to the college academies that, some of these students that would have gone to a 2-year school have those credits under their belt and they're already prepared to enter that 4-year college.
And I agree with you. Our academy program here, whether it's the STEM Academy, whether it's our Leadership Academy, whether it's our College Academy, a lot of thinking about college is convincing young minds that they can do it. And what we're able to provide them here, when we give them college classes here and challenging classes here at the high school, it still comes with the support of a high school environment. And that is really critical to our mission. It's really fulfilled our mission. And I think it's given the students the confidence that they can go out and do it. And it also gives them the skills to be able to manage what it's like to take college courses where you're on your own, where you're doing a lot of the work on your own, where you have to be self-disciplined, where deadlines are real deadlines. And I think that our instructors especially, I give them all the credit in the world. Many of our instructors are dual certified. They teach high school loads and they teach college loads. We're probably at about a dozen adjunct professors here at the high school now. And those teachers really impart their wisdom and impart their skills upon our high school students, and it's really made a huge difference, and I think this slide really shows that.
Thank you so much for watching. This presentation will be available on our website.